this was my insecurity of why I never thought I could do it, because I don't have a college degree and they're going to surpass me. And honestly, there was some things in the first grade curriculum that Kenny and I were like, did you ever learn the object of the preposition? I don't even know what this is. Like,
Yeah.
but see, my co-teacher is Siri and Alexa and Google, and it works great. They're amazing.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Don't Just Buy a House, Build a Home. Today, we are exploring the topic of homeschooling. You know, homeschooling has taken on an entirely new level of popularity in the last 2 years. And although many families were initially compelled to become more active in the teaching of their children because of the school closures, today, thousands of parents are making the conscious decision to teach their kids at home rather than sending them back into the traditional school system. So today, I invited Kenny and Kati Carlson, homeschooling parents here in Spokane, to share their experience as parent teachers to help us get a real life perspective on what it takes to be a homeschooling parent. So I hope you enjoy our conversation, and if you do, please like and subscribe. Thank you.
Right, my guys, we are recording. Kenny and Kati Carlson in the house. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
Kenny, Kati, and I have known each other for how long now? Probably 5
years. Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we met Rooted, right? How would you describe Rooted?
Rooted is like a 10-week entry-level sort of discipleship program for newer Christians to kind of get the basic idea of what Christianity is all about.
Yeah. My wife and I got into it as brand new Christians, and we were lucky enough to have the guidance and leadership of Kati and Kenny back in the day, and then from there we became friends.
Yep.
Now we're homies.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, the subject matter or the topic for today is homeschooling. And before we get into it, I just wanted to offer a few disclaimers. One is I am brand new to the topic of homeschooling. So the extent of my knowledge is essentially the research I did getting ready for this conversation. So this conversation will be as helpful and informative to me as it will be hopefully for the families listening to us. And then two is Kenny and Kati are not making any claims of being experts in this area. That instead, all they are doing is sharing their personal real life experience as homeschooling parents, which I would argue is more valuable than theoretical or philosophical arguments. So they're going to give us the ins and outs of going through it in real life. So guys, before we get into it, why don't we define our terms? So let me start by asking you, how would you define homeschooling?
I think it's as simple as when the parents choose or parent chooses to take full responsibility for all of their academics. That's how I would probably define it. It can look so different, but ultimately they're taking full responsibility for every aspect of it.
Awesome. Do you agree with that, Kenny, or anything you want to add to it?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense to me. I mean, it's everything from, the basics from math to English to history, but then you have to throw in there, PE and Bible and all this other stuff too, right? That comes along with things that they would do at school. So,
and not cooking and laundry and picking up dog poop. These are essential skills for life that we can throw in there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And when you say taking full responsibility, that sounds like a loaded term. So we're going to unpack that today. But let me just ask you, what factors influenced your decision to homeschool your girls? And by the way, just tell us about your kids really quickly.
So we have two girls, two beautiful girls, Charlotte and Georgia, 10 and 7 currently. They are just as sweet as can be. They really are. We are very blessed in that they are light to the world.
Yeah. They're little lights for God, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So now tell us, how do you come to make the decision to homeschool them?
So, you know, those moments in life where you say, like, when I'm a mom, I will never let my child in my bed, or I will never homeschool. I was kind of that I will never homeschool mom. And I thought it was amazing. I just thought I wasn't wired for it and I wouldn't be enough for the kids is really what it came down to. I just didn't think that was something that I would ever be capable of. But then COVID hit, and that's really our story. Is all of a sudden the kids are home, and I had a choice to support what was provided for them, or to just take it on. And so the first year, Kenny and I just really felt like for 1 year, let's just take this on and see what happens. You know, it's not looking hopeful for what schools are providing through that. It was challenging, it was stressful, it was uncertain. So we just decided, let's try 1 year. And very quickly for us, we realized that our kids were thriving in it.
Yes.
So not only was it not nearly as rigorous and hard as I thought it would be, we just watched them thrive. The slower pace, the ability to ask more individual questions, the ability to skip stuff if they already knew it. I liken it to tutoring. You're one-on-one often. And so there's just a whole different level that you're able to educate them. And we just watched them specifically thrive in it.
Awesome. And you just brought up something that it just didn't cross my mind as I thought about the option to homeschool.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that you don't have to be married to that idea right away. You can test it out, which is what you guys did. You were forced to, because of COVID, to give that a try for a year and see how it went. And I think that's a healthy way to look at it. It's like just you can test drive it and see if it worked for your family or not. Awesome.
Most of the families I look up to, they still do it every year. They don't assume that this is all the way through for them, but they recognize if their kids' needs ever change, then they would put them back in school or put them into school. So it's a year to year.
Yeah. So what do you think changed, if anything at all, that fomented or contributed to your girls thriving during that year?
You take that one.
I think a big thing that changed was really that that one-on-one time with mom and dad. You know, well, mainly mom, but that our world is so crazy fast-paced right now, right? And we're always running. Everybody's running from here to there to here to there, and that the one-on-one time with mom and with dad, that most kids don't have a lot of that, because by the time you pick up your kid comes home from public school or whatever, it's time to eat dinner, or then you got to take Billy to basketball practice or whatever, you know what I mean? And then it's time to get in the shower at 7 o'clock, and then time to read books and say your prayers and go to bed. So like that one-on-one time with mom and dad that I feel like kids don't really get that much these days. I think really was a game changer for them that was allowed them to flourish in it.
I think a lot of kids sit in the pressure or anxiety of what's happening in their class too. So it's really easy to compare. It's really easy to say I'm behind or I'm ahead or whatever. Well, all of that's kind of stripped away in homeschool. You get to just like nurture their gifts and their natural talents right where they are. So there's areas where I push them hard because they're really gifted in it. And honestly, there's areas that I don't, because they don't have to be amazing at everything. right? So we're going to really balance those gifts,
That's good.
academically, emotionally, physically, like all of it. But I think that's dead on. Just the pace. The pace is different. Anybody who's had kids and had to get them out the door to go to school is like, I get you right now, because it's so hard to get everybody in the car and out the door and lunch packed and everything. And when you strip that away and can do school in pajamas, it's really kind of rad.
That sounds really tempting.
Yeah.
I go through that every single day. So yes, I can
Right.
definitely relate to that. As you guys may know, I have 4 children,
Yes.
2 school age, and every morning is just chaos. So yes, the idea of just stay in your jammies, have some breakfast, and then we'll jump into schoolwork
Mhm.
sounds really good.
It's amazing.
Kenny, you just brought up something that I deeply believe in, which is that parental connection with your children being the difference maker. Once they feel seen, heard, loved unconditionally, I mean, that's just the foundation for everything else. So I love that you said that about connections. You said something else, Katie, that nurturing their gifts, which is really powerful. As I was doing research, I learned that, and I've seen this to be true, that in our traditional school system, most teachers teach toward testing standards, which is obviously not the most optimal way to nurture those unique special gifts that our kids have. So I think you guys are making the case for me to look into that seriously. But now let's just get into what have you found to be the pros and cons of homeschooling.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, pros is schedule for sure. Next week, all the kids are in school, but we have an opportunity to go visit my grandma. So we're going to go take the kids to visit great grandma. Like, the freedom of that is incredible. For those, I mean, mine's only 10 and 7, but when they're younger and they're just having a hard day, I don't have to push through it. Like, I can wait and help them do their best work instead of just get it done. And it doesn't mean that I'm not educating them. It just might really shift of maybe it's just a heavier reading day and we're just going to snuggle and read. Maybe it's a heavy history day and we throw the history book out and we're just sitting there reading it. But it can just shift to where they're at, which is huge. I mean, that's even an approach. There's so many different approaches. There's unschooling, which is completely child-led. Whatever your child wants to do that day, that's what they're interested in. That's what you should take them down. That hasn't been the approach that my control freak nature thrives with as much. So we definitely have a little more structure to it. But I would say heavy pro, you get to pick. It doesn't look anything like the school district. So heavy pro is you get to teach them in whatever capacity you need to that's best for them. So many different methods, from like heavy literature with Charlotte Mason to like rigorous classical to unschooled, and so many things in between. And you get to pick and choose where that's at. And that's probably the biggest pro. Whatever situation I can provide my child to thrive and push them just like half a step past comfort zone, because it's not about keeping them comfortable, it's about growing them. So I'm constantly pushing them as well, but you just get to adapt it to their sweet little age and personality and skill set. And the con, this is the biggest con, which is going to sound crazy. Everybody says socialization.
I was about to bring that up.
Yeah, no, like, this is not a thing anymore. I squash it. I kill it. Like, the problem is saying no to all the opportunities that there are now, because there's so many homeschool families. There's so many activities. There's so many things that it actually is more of a problem for us to say no to it, to make sure we get our schoolwork done, because the opportunities are really, I mean, they're everywhere. Like, any gymnastics, or a lot of like those have special homeschool hours. Skiing have special homeschool hours. homeschool families in general really want that community. So we have one we meet with 3 girls. They're just amazing. We love them so much. We meet every week for like 2 to 3 hours to play. And then there's like 2 other families that would like to meet weekly, and we just can't quite fit it all in. So con is actually like you have to be prepared to guard your school hours. That sounds so silly, but it's just you in something that's so flexible. I really think it's critical that you guard it for us, for our family, to make sure you make time to get it done. There's
And that
been,
makes
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I don't mean to interrupt, but that makes complete sense when you said that you have to guard those hours because, in a traditional system, me, for example, I rely on the structure being set by the school.
Mhm.
But if it's up to me and have all that freedom and flexibility, then I have to be more intentional about those hours. I was going to ask you, as I listen to you go over the pros, which essentially are freedom and flexibility, based on what you said. It sounds also that if I'm responsible for the academic growth of my child, that sounds a little bit intimidating. So that said, do you feel that as a parent, should we have or do we have to have any special training to be good teachers to our kids, or is it something that we can easily develop as we go along?
Mhm. I'm going to flip that question back to both of you. The most impactful teacher you ever had in your life, was it because they were gifted teaching, or did they know you well? Like, what made them the best teacher?
Mic drop. Boom.
Right? Like,
Yes.
so this was my insecurity of why I never thought I could do it, because I don't have a college degree and they're going to surpass me. And honestly, there was some things in the first grade curriculum that Kenny and I were like, did you ever learn the object of the preposition? I don't even know what this is. Like,
Yeah.
but see, my co-teacher is Surrey and Alexa and Google, and it works out great. They're amazing.
Yeah.
So it's I mean, my goodness, like academics are critical, and there are so many options for great co-ops, for parent-teacher partnerships through school districts, for online curriculum. There is a lot of options for that, but my heart and my goal is to create, and we both agree with this, just lifelong learners that love learning, that love finding problems and solving problems. But when my kids will pick up a book and get lost in it for hours, like, I'm great with that. It's incredible. It's incredible. So it can be a lot of pressure, but there's so much support out there. There really is.
Yeah. A couple of things. Lifelong learners.
Mhm.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And that's one of my goals as a parent as well, just to teach my kids more than anything how to think.
Yeah.
So going back to one of the main criticisms or stigma around homeschooling when it comes to unsocialized kids,
Mhm.
you just debunked that, and that may have been a concern years and years ago, but just like you said, nowadays there are so many resources in communities, and in fact, I learned that homeschooling has almost double uh, in the last 2 years, going from, I think it was like 2 million to close to 5 million kids being homeschooled. So it's definitely becoming more and more popular, and consequently creating more and more options and opportunities for homeschooling families. One thing I wanted to ask is, based on my experience and what I've read, it tends to be overwhelmingly the mom, the one who is in charge of homeschooling. So my question to you is, do both parents have to be involved, or is it primarily the responsibility of one of them?
I am like a hard yes. Not that Kenny has to teach them, Though, like, usually their favorite classes are when he's like, let's do art class and tie-dye shirts. Like, he's definitely maybe their favorite teacher. But homeschooling is challenging in the sense of you have added on to the responsibility of their sweet, precious hearts, their character, their work ethic, now their education. I mean, you've now taken it all on, every one of their sins. So if I didn't have him for me and supporting me, I would wither. Like, it is not easy. It really is not easy. So having him be such a cheerleader, such a support, or coming in and being strong and saying, kiddos, we've got to get this done, or supporting me when I'm like, one of the things I was like, I'm not getting to any kind of read alouds. I'd really like them hearing more old literature. And he's like, all right, Moby Dick, come on, kids. And he took him and read it every night before bed. So in my mind, it's not essential, but it's sure a huge miss if both parents aren't totally for it, totally supporting it. You don't have to be equal hours into it, but you both have to own the education of their children and just the upbringing of your children. You both have to own it.
Yeah, it's a huge responsibility for a mother or a father or whatever, for one single parent to do it by themselves, and the other one has to realize that. I mean, that is huge. That's a huge responsibility for that parent that's taking that on. So coming alongside that, your spouse, right, or significant other, like to do that is just essential for their health, especially, because the majority of us have never homeschooled children before or whatever, and it's a whole new thing. And so really coming alongside and being the support for that, and really like when you need to step in and tell the kids, like, hey, it's time to, bring it back over here. You know what I mean? And because mom has to say that all day long. And, so really just coming alongside and being that sort of partner.
Or here's another example. I've bought almost all the curriculum used because it can be pricey and it can be cheap. And there's tons of public support where you can actually get it free. Like, there's amazing situations, but there was one math curriculum I really, really wanted. I thought it was just going to be what the girls needed. I got it. I really hated it. The girls hated it. It was not a good fit, and it was ridiculously expensive. It was 3 times the price of any other curriculum I had ever bought. And so we powered through it for like 3.5 months, to the point where I'm almost in tears because I'm like, this is just not working. But for him to just look at me and say, stop, get a new curriculum, knock it off, that kind of support, that it's just huge. It's huge to have both 100% for it. Okay. And forgiving when mistakes happen, or, we need a different change up or whatever, is huge.
And when I asked the question, I was thinking specifically about the older parent, let's say the dad, be more involved directly in helping with the training and teaching. But what you just said makes even more sense, is that you can still support your children by supporting me and helping me and refilling my cup, essentially, making sure that I am emotionally and spiritually healthy and in a good place, so I can then serve them better and help them better. And that makes complete sense. You just brought up the topic of curriculums.
Mm-hmm.
And can you just unpack that for me a little bit? Just tell me a little bit how that works. How much flexibility or freedom do you have to choose the curriculum for your kids? Are there any guidelines or regulations that you have to abide by? So just explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So each state's going to be different, and even like some you have to apply. In Washington State, one parent has to have a college degree, or you have to do this little course. So there's different things in different states, but for the most part, the curriculum is 100% up to the parents. The exception can be if you're partnered with like a public school program that will give you money, a lot of them won't let you do any faith-based curriculum, or maybe they won't let you do any music curriculum, something like that. And then others are more free to what you can do. But when it comes to curriculum, this is what I would say from my own fault. I thought the curriculum was the number one most important decision. And actually, if you go one step deeper and research methods, you'll reach it a lot better. And that's kind of what I was talking about, like child-led unschooling. If that's a better approach for you, that will like narrow down that list of curriculum to nothing. Actually, there's no curriculum with that. If you are more rigid and you're like, I want my kid to learn Latin, I want my kid to, like, my child, I want this for them, and my child will thrive in more classroom structured time, you might go more classical education and Saxon and Shirley and kind of go that direction. I find myself in like all camps a little bit, but I really love more of like the Charlotte Mason approach. And that one is heavy on reading. I mean, it's just really heavy. My kids are both at least 4 to 5 grades levels above where they should be in reading, but they love it. That's not even a thing. Like, they just love reading. And because of that, they're good spellers. They have great vocabulary. Like, a lot of things come out of that. Now, we still do math, we still do history, we still do science, but a lot of those things are a little more, well, here's an example. Last year, my youngest, Georgia, was super into frogs. So we went to the library and we got some frog books, and that was her science curriculum. Right now, my oldest is super into rocks. So we do a lot of extra rock studies, and she got to meet a geologist and so forth. So there is a huge flexibility, and I think that's one of the most overwhelming decisions for most parents when they start. But if you can start with the method, it really narrows down the list so much. And then my thing is just buy used, or see if you can look at somebody else's first, and then make sure it's a good fit, or do the online like assessment test and so forth. But as far as regulations, there's very little. But once again, my kids are young, so that could change. It can also change if you plan on transferring them back in. So if you say, I want to do elementary, well, by the time they go back into junior high, they should have had Washington State history. So there's some things like that you need to be aware of. But it's a Google search. It's a really easy thing to keep your hands on, but very little things like that, especially for younger kiddos.
I feel like I'm doing a disservice to our audience by just moving on from that question, because it sounds like curriculums and methods could be a whole show all by itself if we were to unpack that, because it sounds essential and crucial. But unfortunately, given the time, we're going to have to move on.
Let's do it.
So I have just 2 more questions for you. One, what advice or suggestion would you offer to families who are considering the homeschooling route?
I think there's a lot of things that are being taught in school today that and there's a lot of hard questions that are being asked. And so these questions they're either going to be asked in the public school system to a teacher or a counselor first, right, by your child, or you're going to get to field those questions first, right? Because they're all still exposed to everything, but we get to field those questions first. So I guess that's like a really big one for me, is all of the things going on with the world. There's a lot of, lots of change is happening. And so we get the opportunity to field these questions one-on-one with our kids before they have an influence from another adult that we don't know, or another kid that we don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's a big one.
And I would add to that, like, that does not mean we shelter. We're actually the complete opposite of that. My kids at 7 and 10 have had all the birds and bees talk, have had the pornography talk. We're in the process of teaching them all the cuss words. That was some good friends of ours said, well, we want when they hear a word to know what it means. And if they know what it means, they won't use it. I'm like, that's genius. So there's an aspect of us wanting to like shelter our kids, but instead we as Jesus followers are building a firm foundation on that. That is the core of our house. So we get to lay that foundation because they're little sponges, but also we would do such a disservice to not teach them what's happening in the world, to love everybody, but not be shocked by anybody. So my number one is like, do not, if you have a heart to do this because you want to shelter your kids, really, really, really think through that, because you cannot shelter them forever. It is so hard to be sheltered and then exposed to everything at once. I think everybody can name that friend that went to college and like lost it off the deep end, right? So yeah, not shelter, but just relax. It's a long journey. They don't have to hit every mile marker every year. They're going to blow some away, and then they're not. Some years they're going to like soar. Other years are going to be tough. Like it's a marathon. Just focus on little battles, but remember you're in long haul. That would be my big thing.
I hate to end this conversation. I can just on that point, we can just go all day long. Let me just summarize what you just said. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But you're making the clear distinction between sheltering and preparation.
Yeah.
So homeschooling is not sheltering, or should not be the goal. Instead, it should be to prepare them to effectively navigate the real world out there.
Yeah.
You caught me off guard when you said that you're teaching your kids cuss words. I've never thought of it.
They're good to hear them. Do you want them to hear them from you or somebody
Exactly.
else? Right?
It makes total sense. It just makes total sense.
If you don't teach your kids about sex, they're still going to learn about sex. Like, so teach them. Like, don't shelter.
Yes.
All of it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, do not shelter them. Prepare them. Equip them. Excellent. Well, guys, to close it out, there's an unrelated question to our topic. And it's just one question that I always like to ask parents. And that is, how do you want your children to remember you?
As a Christian, the first thing that comes to my mind, like as a Jesus follower, I want them to remember me as someone who is a humble servant. And someone that is not about what's in it for me, so that's for me. Yeah.
I mean, I would align the same thing of my deepest wish for my children is a solid relationship with Jesus because of the freedom from so many things it's given us for our love for him. I just hope they remember me as a Jesus follower, but that it actually aligns with who the man really was. None of the hypocritical stuff that happens in the church, but that like they would say, my mom really got Jesus. She loved like Jesus. She was patient like Jesus. Not 100% of the time. They know I'm human, but like that would be the greatest thing ever, for sure.
Awesome. I love it. Well, guys, thank you so very much for being here today. This was wonderful. Yeah. Hopefully we can do a sequel because so many points that we left unpacked. But anyway, so I'm sure that families will benefit from listening to this conversation. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, guys. We'll see you again next week. Make it a great day.
You too.